there are a lot of different polygamous groups, like I've said. Our group, you could recognize them. There are probably several like this, but ours specifically, they did wear old pioneer-looking clothing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the April and Davey podcast. We have April back. We've got an exciting topic to cover today. We've got a dog in here. We're going to get it out right now.
The dog. You guys may be confused right now because we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I have not always been a member of this church. I actually grew up very different than most people, and I grew up in Utah in a city called West Jordan, and I had a very different childhood. So today we are going to talk about that because I have not talked about this on social media at all, ever.
This is like inner circle stuff. You guys should feel very excited. Like when we start to get to know friends, when these stories come out, we're close. So you guys should feel close right now.
Yeah. So usually after I tell this story, people tell me to write a book, and then I laugh at them because if you know one thing about me, it is I would probably rather do anything else in the world than write a book. Writing is very difficult for me. Talking is not. So I will do the podcast, and hopefully you guys can, I don't know what you're going to get from this. Maybe just some entertainment or maybe some insight. But for me, this is kind of like my conversion story too. So here we go. I'm going to start from the very beginning. It's a very good place to start.
Is that a song?
It is.
Let's start from the very beginning.
I guess I would say the very beginning would be let's start with my parents. Their parents, so my grandparents were actually the ones that were like converted into this polygamist church. Now, the church that I grew up in was called the FLDS Church, Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ. So what happened there is years ago, back many, many years ago, I guess after Brigham Young, I think that John Taylor was the next prophet after him, right?
I think so, yeah.
Now, that is where the split happened in this specific church. Now, just to give you a little background about polygamy, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had, like when Joseph Smith was the prophet years and years ago, 200 years ago, he was commanded to like use polygamy. So it's very difficult to explain all this because it is in our church history. And if you want a full account of all that, I would suggest listening to the book Saints. And they have volume 1 and they're coming out with volume 2. And that tells you a lot more of the background because it is very complex and it is very difficult. And even before that, you can find many instances of polygamy in the Bible. So it's kind of been something that's been around for a very long time. But I think the biggest thing is authority. And I'll talk about that more later. So when the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints came out and said, we're not practicing this anymore, we're going to follow the laws, and this isn't a thing anymore, there was a big split. So that's kind of where the FLDS Church came from. And I will also say that there are many other polygamous churches out there, and they all kind of believe different things. So there's probably, I don't even know how many, definitely more than like 20 or 30 probably 10 that I know of myself that are in this area. But the one that I belong to, that I grew up in, was the FLDS Church. Now, this one is specifically kind of famous, I guess in a bad way, because of Warren Jeffs. Now, if any of you are familiar with Warren Jeffs, he is right now in prison serving, I think, a life sentence for marrying off really young girls, like 12-year-old girls to really old men. Really creepy, gross. Yeah, yuck stuff. So he was on the FBI's most wanted list for a while. He was on the run. They did catch him, sent him to prison. So that's the church I'm talking about when I say the polygamist church that I grew up in. Is the FLDS Church. Warren Jeffs was actually someone that I saw on a daily basis. And I will tell you a little bit more about that in the story too. But we'll start from the beginning, my parents' marriage. So this is kind of how things worked with this specific church. There was a prophet. I will call him a prophet for 1 second, and then I'm going to start calling him a false prophet because I really do not believe that he held the keys of a prophet. I really just don't believe that. because there's a lot of things that I've noticed with the church that I am in now, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I notice there is an authority with the prophets there, and they are very uplifting, and the messages from the conference, like if you listen to General Conference, that's where we have it twice a year. It's always uplifting, loving, and when I was growing up, the prophet's message was always fear. You're not good enough. Like, that was the message. So it's very clear to me that he was not a true prophet. So I will say false prophet, but he would just assign people to get married. So he would pray about it, whatever. I don't know. He just said, like, I think you're supposed to marry this person. So you didn't get to fall in love. There wasn't dating. It was just an assignment. The prophet would just assign people to get married. And sadly, not everyone in the church was actual polygamists. They were members of that church, but they'd only have like one wife. They would assign out more wives to men that were doing well financially or really successful. And then they would kind of give them some cute young brides, you know? So my parents, my mom was 18. My dad, I think he was like 16 years older than her. Is that, how many years apart is your parents?
16 is my parents, yeah.
So mine weren't that many. Maybe it's like 9. I think he's 9 years older than her. It was a lot. But
and my parents chose to be married to each other. They weren't assigned. But
no,
16 years apart. Yes.
They grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like the real church. My parents, both of their parents were in this FLDS church, and they had never met until the day before their wedding day. So the prophet met with their parents, said, I've had inspiration that you should marry this person. And they both said, okay. They got married. My mom had not even graduated high school, so she didn't have a GED or a high school diploma. She was just a very young 18-year-old girl, and my dad was just a good guy, but just a young, like 25-year-old, 27-year-old. I don't remember how old he is, but he's quite a bit older. And they got married to each other, and I felt like that actually was kind of lucky because they could have married my mom off to a guy, like an older man that had like 6 wives already, really. So my parents were married, and then they had 6 kids. So they had a girl, my sister Marisha, then my sister Charlotte, then my sister Esther, and then a boy, Stephen, and then me. I'm the 5th kid, and then my little brother, Jeffrey. So 6 kids. Okay, I know exactly how 6 kids feels because I have 6 kids right now, but it's a lot. And I can't imagine doing it with someone that I didn't choose to marry. I will just say that. Because my parents did get divorced when I was like, I think I was 5. And my little brother was like 3. Maybe I was like almost 5. Like around Evie's age, 4 or 5. And I remember my dad leaving, but I really can't blame them. They did the best they could. But I think it's very interesting that they really just were assigned to be married.
And
6
they were
kids
still
later.
like, is divorce okay? Like
no,
in their church.
So when my dad left, my mom stayed in the church. Now, I forgot to mention too, this church had its own school. It was called Alta Academy, and it was right above a little restaurant in Utah called Lakai. You can probably look up Lakai and see how beautiful it is. It was like a half of a mile up the canyon further than this restaurant. And it doesn't exist anymore. It's been sold to some medical care facility now, but it was basically a compound.
Was it K through 12? Was it all the grades?
Yeah, K through 12. And also they had very high fences that covered the entire compound. And the prophet lived on that same lot. There was the prophet's house, and then there were several other smaller houses. And then there was a large school building, and then another smaller school building where the junior high would meet. And just a very, very big parking lot with like basketball hoops, and we would play kick soccer. And so I went to that school from 2nd grade, I believe, on. I did not pass the test to go for 1st grade or kindergarten. I think it was 1st grade. So I did do 1 year of public school for 1st grade just to kind of get me caught up, because I don't think that I knew like ABCs and colors and stuff like I should have. So they kind of were like, oh, she's not. It was a private school, so you had to kind of like test in. So I did do 1 year of public school for 1st grade, and then 2nd grade I did test in, and I was able to go to the school with the rest of my siblings. So all of us my mom would drive us up to the canyon. It was like a 40-minute drive, 35, 40 minutes every day, drop us off. She would go to work, and then she'd pick us up and bring us home. And then eventually my oldest sister was old enough to drive us all to school. So she would take the van, drive us all back and forth to school, all 6 of us, same school. So that's pretty convenient. And I can see why my mom kind of left us in that school as soon as my dad left, because she kind of had a choice, because she didn't have a huge education. She had all these kids. My dad had left and divorced. And he basically at that point was excommunicated from the FLDS church, because like, it's not cool. You can't just get a divorce there. So they did take my mom, and I know that my mom received some like welfare from them also. Cause I remember we didn't have very much money, and we'd be at the grocery store, and I'd say, how did you get money to buy groceries? Cause I remember her just saying we didn't have enough money for groceries. And she's like, a little birdie gave it to me. But then I realized one day that was, she would go meet with the prophet, and they would give her some money for groceries. So they were helping her financially, and all 6 of us went to the same school. It was really convenient, and she was able to drop us off and go to work and then pick us up after work. So I can see why we were just like, for normalcy, because that was our normal, she left us in that church. So I will tell you a little bit about the school, because this is actually comical for most people. So there are a lot of different polygamist groups, like I've said. Our group, you could recognize them. There are probably several like this, but ours specifically, they did wear old, like, pioneer looking clothing. So you would have to wear a long sleeve dress that covered to like the mid-shin of your knee of calf. And then we'd usually have to wear thick tights or pants underneath our dress also. And basically you weren't going to be showing any skin at all. You were covered from your wrists down to your ankles, and not super form-fitting, no cleavage, like high neck lines. Most of them made their own dresses and clothes. Like, I could see why a lot of people confuse that church with Amish people because they kind of do.
Was there swimsuits? Did you guys go swimming?
You would swim in your clothes. Yeah, we would go swimming.
In the clothing, huh?
Yeah, we would. I remember swimming in like a thinner dress that was like long sleeved and like leggings. Yeah, we would go to pools when we would go down to Colorado City. Colorado City is where a lot of the FLDS people live now. And I can tell that part of the story too. But so yeah, I'm going to go back to where I'm talking about school. So yeah, we wore those clothes every day. And then I kind of have a unique look on all of this, because I know most of the people that grew up going to this school, they would just, that was their life. Like, their parents were pretty strict on their religion thing. My mom, I feel like we were kind of just there because she didn't know where else to go and hadn't really like thought about it or made up her mind. So when we got home, we would change into shorts and a tank top and go hang out with the neighborhood kids. So there was like my school outfit, like almost like a uniform, where I would dress up like a polygamist girl and wear my hair in a little wave with braids. I need to find some pictures and post this on Instagram once this goes live. You guys are going to love it. But then when I get home, I just change right over into my regular clothes and hang out with my friends. Now, there were several occasions where this was a problem for me because, like I said, the prophet and Warren Jeff specifically, they would get up every single day and tell us how, like, it was this is really where the brainwashing and like it's really sad, because these people are such good people. Like, the polygamist people, the families, the members, they are wonderful, wonderful, very good people. But they were very much ruled with fear. So I remember we'd have an hour every single day, K through 12, where they would have all of us sit in the meeting room, and Warren Jeffs or someone would talk for about an hour, and they called it morning class. Now, if you missed morning class, you were required to get a recording of the tape. They would make recordings of it every day, and you'd have to listen to it, like if you were sick or something, and take notes and hand in your notes to get credit for that assignment. It was an actual class. They called it morning class, and they would read from the scriptures. We did use the Book of Mormon, but they would read from the scriptures, and then they would like just preach. And I remember specifically, there was one time where I missed school and I got the tape and I had to listen to it. I think I was in like 5th grade. And I remember listening to it and being like, this is so crazy, because my mom didn't teach me like this stuff. So I would go home and play with my friends, my normal neighborhood. But then I'm listening to this tape and I remember Warren Jeffs saying in his little monotone voice, I wish I could find the tape and let you guys listen to it. But it was like, girls, treat boys like they are snakes. Do not go by them. Do not talk to them. If you saw a poisonous snake, you would not go by it. And girls, like, treat them like they're going to bite you. They're poisonous snakes. And boys, you treat girls like they're poisonous snakes. Like, he did not want the boys and the girls
That
having
explains
crushes.
it. April actually treated me as a snake the first time I met her.
Yeah.
It all makes sense now.
You're so crazy.
Just kidding.
No, but like I remember being like, that's weird. Okay. And I remember writing it down, treat boys like they're snakes. And I'm like, this is not right. Like, it's so much fear. Like, and I remember also, like, every single year he would predict the end of the world. Like, the whole valley is going to be burned and all this like scary stuff that they would say. And then if it didn't happen, like, they'd even throw out dates, like it wouldn't happen. And then instead of just being like, oh, we were wrong, no, he would turn around and say, it's because of your unfaithfulness, like blaming all of the members. And they need to do this and they need to do that. So it was like, that was the kind of, I will say, brainwashing and like negative fear-mongering comments that were like constantly thrown at us from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And you had to take notes on it and listen to it. If you missed it, you have to listen to it. I'm like, looking back, it's so crazy. And so this Warren Jeffs, he was the principal at the time. And later on, he became the next prophet. But at this time when I saw him daily, he was the principal. And so, like I said, I would go home wearing my tank top and shorts with my friends. And every once in a while, I'd jump in the car with Mom and we'd head to the Reams, the grocery store. And everything would be fine until all of a sudden you turn a corner and, oh no, who's that? Oh, it's someone from the FLDS church, and they lock eyes with you and they see you in those tank top and shorts and you know you're busted. Like, you're in worldly clothes. That's what they would call them. They would call like anyone that wasn't a member of their church the Gentiles. And there was a lot of fear wrapped around that. Like, don't talk to the Gentiles, you know? So, I mean, it was just really hard. But at the same time, I'm super grateful for my mom because she didn't play any of that. She didn't require us to do all that. Like, she kind of just let us have at our own and have our own opinions. And she didn't care that I was wearing a tank top and shorts. In fact, she bought them for me, like, whatever. But then I'd get to school the next day and be called up to Warren Jeff's office. And I remember, like, I'm like 4th grade, guys. I remember being in my little short skirt, and I think I didn't wear tights underneath it that day too. So I was like my knees were showing. And I got called up to the principal's office, and I'm so scared. And I get called into his office, and I'm sitting there all alone in this office with Warren Jeffs, and I'm just like, I'm in trouble. I remember how scary it was. And then he starts telling me, is it true that you were seen in the grocery store in worldly clothes? And I'm like, yeah. And he'd give me a little lecture and then say, you know, you need to do this and that. And I remember, like, my 5th grade teacher, she was so young. I think she was like 19, 20. Beautiful, beautiful girl. She was married to the prophet who was like 80 something. And I just remember thinking, like, why is she married to that old guy? It's so weird. And I remember she made me like undergarments that were like from my ankles to my wrists. And she made me some dresses. Like, she was super sweet. And I loved her, my 5th grade teacher. I don't remember her name, but I remember she made me all these clothes because I knew that she knew that I had been getting in trouble a lot for my wardrobe. And it was a super sweet gesture from her. And I remember wearing them and loving those dresses. But looking back, I'm also like, oh, so weird.
Hey, quick question. So you guys commuted to the school, the area. Was there people that actually lived within the compound, or did everybody commute to it?
Yeah, no. Okay, so people lived all over the valley back then. And this is like in the 90s, early 90s to all the way to like, what what year? Probably like
It's not there anymore, right?
No. Okay, so I don't know the years. From when I was in kindergarten up until 7th grade is when I went to this school. So that when I was in 7th grade, I'd have to do the math really fast. What year would that be? If I graduated in 2001, 7, that's 5 years before.
97, 96?
So 96, like 1996, 1995, 1996, somewhere in there. They decided that they were going to sell the compound. And your question, let me answer that really quick. There were people that lived in the walls of the compound, and those people were the Jeffs, like Warren Jeffs.
All family.
Like the prophet and all of his, I don't even know, like 20-something wives and all of their kids. And then like some of the prophet's sons had houses and they lived there full time. But they were kind of spread out away from the school. It was very, very big. It was probably like 15, 20 acres.
Okay, one more question, and then I'll let you get back to your story. Was there recruiting for the church?
Not that I know of. I mean,
the church wasn't really growing at that point?
I mean, it grew because people's having lots of kids. I mean,
yeah.
You have families that have like 20-something children.
But you don't remember any like recruiting?
No, I don't remember.
Maybe you were too young.
You know, there was a lot of recruiting probably that did happen. There were people in Canada, in Texas. There were other states, even countries where people would like come over and join in and start going to the school. So new people would come, but I feel like it was a lot of like the same families. Like a lot of the same families would have their kids marry, or it was very complex. And I remember if you like fell in love with someone and like requested to be married, sometimes they would allow that, but they really frowned upon it. Really, really frowned upon that, because the prophet usually made the calls on who married who. So where was I in my story?
You were talking about meeting with the principal, going to the grocery store, getting busted, and worldly clothing.
I remember watching the 2020 or the little things that were on the TV back when Warren Jeffs was on the most wanted list and they were looking for him. He was actively hiding from the FBI. They were trying to capture him because of these charges and bring him to court. And there was a movie that I think it was like 2020 or something. I can't remember. But they made Warren Jeffs out to be like this guy that kind of like creepily walked around the classrooms and like pet the girls' braids and stuff. And I was like laughing so hard. I'm like, this is so inaccurate. No, he never tried to do anything creepy to me. But like I said, that was years and years before he became the prophet. I think that he probably ended up doing a lot more creepy things later on. But obviously he's in prison. So, anyway, so yeah, Warren Jeffs, not my favorite person, but it all came down to when they decided to sell the compound. I think that they were in financial trouble. And this was when I was about to start my 8th grade year. I had just finished my 7th grade year of school, and they came and they told everyone. And I remember distinctly my mom being like, we just got excommunicated. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, all of you guys just got kicked out of school and excommunicated. And I was like, what happened? And my mom said, well, they told us all, you have a choice. You can sell your homes and move down to Colorado City. It's kind of by St. George, Utah, if you don't know where that is. It's on the border of Arizona and Utah. It's called Colorado City. And they wanted everyone to move down there. Now that I'm older and wiser, I understand why. It was definitely financial gains. They were selling the compound and the school, and they were trying to move everyone down there. And they owned a very, very significant large amount of the land down there. In fact, they owned the entire city of Colorado City. And what they would do is that they would give you a square of land, like a lot, and they would let you go to the bank and get a mortgage and build a house. And then as soon as you pay off your house, you were expected to consecrate it to the Lord. So you would sign the deed back over to the church. So they continued to own all of the land and the houses in that city.
Was there rich or poor? Like if somebody made more money, was it complete consecration of everything or just your homes?
It was kind of like just the homes. Well, like they were expected to pay tithing and stuff too. So the richer people were paying more tithing than so they did pay the 10% tithe also. There was a lot of similarities. And I think that having those so many similarities to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is kind of difficult for a lot of people that do leave, because they feel like a lot of people are like, whoa, how are you in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints now? And I think, honestly, I don't know why, but I was super blessed to be able to have my mom not be super like pushy with all of it and let me kind of think for myself. But I also feel like I was super blessed to be able to see the good that was still there. I remember at a very young age reading the Book of Mormon on my own by myself, because it was an assignment, but I remember reading it and praying about it and getting a very, very distinct answer that it was true. The Book of Mormon was true. It really was what it was said to be. Joseph Smith did see what he saw, his vision. Like, I got that spiritual confirmation at a very young age, but that can be super confusing all of a sudden when you think, well, I'm not going to treat boys like snakes, and I don't think that the world's going to be like, all of the valley's going to be burned by fire this year. So you're either going to sell your house and move to Colorado City, or you're excommunicated. Like, how do you decipher between the truth and the lies there? And I love this visual that I saw on Davey's mom's fridge one day. This is after I'd already become a member, but it kind of like stuck with me, because I was like, that's kind of like how it was. Like, it's a beautiful sundae of ice cream with like a cherry on top and whipped cream. And then there's a giant cockroach like stuck in the middle of it. And it's like, it's all good except. So I feel like Satan is so smart, and he knows that the very best lies are the ones that are based on a huge truth. So I was able to decipher, like, the Book of Mormon is true. Joseph Smith is a prophet. But this person that's claiming to be a prophet, he is a false prophet. And because he is a false prophet, he does not have the authority. And he is leading this people, like this group of people, astray and controlling them through fear, instead of encouraging them through love and the pure love of Christ, like the prophets and apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I feel that they do such a great job of encouraging people to be the best people they can be, and encouraging them to help everyone and love everyone, regardless of their religion, race, anything, like even sexual orientation. You are to love them and serve them, and ultimately that is the goal, like, love your neighbor. So very, very different teachings, and yet so many similarities. But I was able to decipher between those, and I really do feel like that helped me when I was taking the discussions from the missionaries and stuff, because I had a very good knowledge of the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, but it was a lot easier for me to kind of like weed out the weeds, pull out the cockroaches from the ice cream, you may say. But so that's when we were excommunicated, is when I was about to start 8th grade. And I'm so proud of my mom, because they did try several times to marry her off to an older man that had several wives. I would have just been thrown into a new house in Colorado City with who knows how many other sister moms and new step siblings. So yeah, like it could have turned out very differently. My mom could have said yes and gotten married off to some of these crazy men that they were trying to throw her at. But she kind of said, no, it's fine. Kick us out. That's fine. Super proud of my mom for that. My mom is such a good person, and she's been through a lot, and she still has such a good attitude. So she's been a really big inspiration for me in a lot of ways. But let's see, where was I going to go from that? Okay, yeah. So then I started public school, which is very different from polygamist school, I will say.
You were able to wear worldly clothes all the time.
Yeah.
That was accepted.
I remember being so excited to go school shopping for 8th grade. I had some pretty cute clothes. My mom, she took me, we didn't have a lot of money, and she still took me to Shopko and let me buy several cute outfits. It was really fun. But it was really hard. I remember not knowing anyone, and I remember people that had been going to school since elementary and kindergarten they had these groups of friends, and I kind of was not in any of the groups of friends. And luckily there was a lot of really sweet people that befriended me through my last year of junior high and through high school. some of them even encouraged me to take seminary, which is interesting. And like, I took it. I remember my junior and maybe my senior year, definitely my junior year. I can't remember if I took it my senior year, but I took a seminary class, and I was probably the only non-member in the class, but that was fun. And I knew all the answers. But I remember people kind of getting shocked when they realized I wasn't a member of the church, because I guess I just seemed like I was. But yeah, so those people that befriended me really did. I don't think they realized how much of an impact they had on my life, but it was good. And I remember not being able, like, I remember taking the discussions when I was 16 for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but not being able to be baptized because no one else in my family was a member of the church. And being 16 and not being out on my own, they're very careful with situations like that, because in the history of the FLES church, if you were to leave and join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they would very much so disown you. And this has happened to a lot of people, and they kind of just find themselves out on the streets without any family and nowhere to stay. So the Church of Jesus Christ is very careful when considering letting someone under the age of 18 that's not out on their own be baptized, that doesn't have a supportive family.
And that's a big problem in general with people that are in polygamous colonies right now. Like, they're not able to leave because they have nothing. They have no money. They have not good education. Is that right?
Well, they have their own schools and stuff, and I feel like the education was actually fine. It was more the problem of, you realize that those people, they just consecrated their house.
You own nothing.
If you walk away, you're walking away with literally the clothes on your back. Like, I still have family members that are there. I have uncles and cousins and aunts. Like, there's people that I love and still love and care about that are still down there and in this religion. And it's very difficult because a lot of them aren't really allowed to communicate, or like they've kind of disowned us. And some of them are good, and like they come to family functions and like our family reunions, and it's fine. But there's a lot of them that really have like disowned, like my mom's brother. He won't even look them in the eye if they're in the same area. I remember my aunt being like, I saw him, they were protesting at the Capitol the other day, and I went to go give him a big hug, and he just like cold-shouldered ignored me. And that's her brother. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. But
do you think they're mad at him, or do you think they're like afraid of associating with him?
I think it's more just like, you left, we're done, like disowned. Yeah. So, which is part of the brainwashing, I think, and the fear and anyway. But there's a lot I don't know, that there's a lot of crazy stories that I do hear. And some of them are so crazy that I don't even want to repeat them, because I feel like they're so crazy that they could just be considered gossip. I'm like, Mom, please tell me. When my mom tells me some of the things that's going on down there, I'm like, please tell me that's a lie. Like, that's just a crazy story someone made up. Like, please tell me. And she's like, oh no, it's happening. It's real. So, I don't know. Pretty sad. I love those people, though. I mean, like I said, I don't think that they know what to do. I don't know that I would know what to do if I was an adult. That my aunt, when she did leave, I have an aunt, she literally did have to leave everything, including some of her children, because the children were afraid that if they went with Mom, then they were going to go to hell. Like, so she kind of had to walk away from everything to get out of there, and then slowly worked for years and years to get back what she lost. And there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Like, she was able to have a court order, a judge order the polygamist church to give back her property. So there's been a lot of turmoil and stuff going on down there right now. And Warren Jeffs is still in prison, and I think he's still trying to call the shots from prison. So it gets really sticky and really messy. And like, really, I would just say pray for the people down there, because I think a lot of them are going through some pretty chaotic changes and not knowing what direction to go. And a lot of them leave and just kind of think like, there is no God. This is all just like crazy. You know, they finally just give up on all of religion, and they think it's all bad altogether because of what they've gone through. And I honestly can't judge them or anything for that, because they have been through a lot. So I don't know. That's kind of my story.
So, I mean,
It's a
in
long
general, you learned a lot of good growing up there, and you are the person that you are because of, how you grew up.
Oh,
You learned a lot of
absolutely.
good gospel. You are awesome at braiding hair,
Well, and they would teach so many good skills too.
sewing.
Sewing, cooking. Like, I remember my sister, she was a senior when we got excommunicated. I remember she had to take like a survival class, and they would teach them how to make fire and blah, blah, blah. They had to like cut the heads off of chickens and feather them, like pluck them
That's
and
amazing.
cook them. Like, they learned pretty amazing skills. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, really good people that have really good intentions being led astray by a false prophet, and it's really sad. But yeah, I was raised with a lot of good intent. Like they did teach honesty. They taught a lot of good. It's not like it was all bad, but like I said, the giant ice cream with the cockroach in it it's kind of a visual that will never leave my mind.
And just fortunately, you were able to decipher the good from the bad. Say these are
Yeah.
the teachings of man. These were the good things I can take from and move
Yeah,
on.
and that's, I think, a very big spiritual blessing that I've been blessed with, is to be able to kind of like differentiate between teachings of man and teachings of like eternal truths, because that is something I do feel really like I have a good, strong testimony of the basic eternal truths that I have learned. And so, yeah, I guess if we want to continue on with the story, because I did say this is kind of my conversion story. So,
Okay, I think that's a good time to end this first part. We're going to continue with April's conversion story on the next podcast. So, April, thank you for sharing that. Your polygamy stories, it's always fun hearing them. She has such a unique background. So, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. You never know what you're going to get on the April and Davey podcast. We're talking about polygamy today. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.